I was taking a long road trip with my close friend Carter to meet up with some of our old college buddies. The journey was going to be a tough one, around 15 hours on the road, but with the two of us switching off, we figured we could handle it in one continuous drive. I took the wheel first, and after about 4 hours, Carter swapped in. The plan was for me to get some rest while he drove, but no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't fall asleep. I don't know what the issue was, but I couldn't relax enough to drift off. So, when it was my turn again, I was already pretty drained, maybe even worse off than before Carter started. I could still keep my eyes on the road and focus, but I completely missed something important, the gas gauge. We were in Carter's old Chevy, which didn't have one of those digital reminders to warn you when the fuel is low. Just a plain meter I hadn't paid any attention to. I didn't realize how close we were to empty until the car began sputtering. That's when it hit me. We were out of gas. Carter woke up instantly as I pulled onto the shoulder, and he quickly started searching his phone for the nearest gas station. But not even half a minute later, the car refused to accelerate anymore, and I had no choice but to stop completely. I felt unbelievably dumb. To make things worse, Carter said the nearest station was about 4 miles away. We were in the middle of nowhere, just endless flat land around us, not another car in sight. We debated our options, but finally Carter decided he'd make the walk to get a gas canister while I stayed back and kept watch over the car. Maybe not the smartest plan, but it seemed ridiculous to pay for roadside service when the station was technically close enough to reach on foot. Even though it was 1 a.m. and the night was pitch black, Carter didn't seem fazed. He got out, started down the road, and within a minute he had vanished into the darkness. I sat alone in the car, running over how careless I'd been. Just a few minutes later, headlights appeared in the distance. At first, I was relieved, thinking maybe someone could help. But as the car passed, something felt off. They were crawling by at maybe 15 or 20 miles per hour when the limit was closer to 60. I glanced in the side mirror and watched them continue slowly, then come to a complete stop. My stomach dropped when they turned around and came back. I didn't want to admit I needed help, and luckily I didn't have to. They didn't stop to ask. Instead, they drove past me again, even slower this time, barely moving at all. I could almost feel their eyes scanning my car. After a few moments, they sped back the way they came, leaving me rattled. I kept staring down the road, waiting, half expecting them to circle back. My gut told me something was wrong. I grabbed my phone and called Carter to warn him, hoping he could hurry. But he didn't answer. The call rang through until voicemail. That made me even more uneasy. I tried again a minute later. Still nothing. At that point, fear got the best of me. I decided to leave the car behind and try to catch up to Carter on foot. It had only been 10 or 15 minutes since he'd left, so if he was still walking, I figured I could jog and meet up with him quickly. I locked the car and started running along the shoulder. The silence was unsettling, so quiet that when I stopped to catch my breath, I could hear the ringing in my ears. No wind, no crickets, nothing. Just dead stillness. I jogged for about 15 minutes but didn't see Carter anywhere. That didn't make sense unless he had started running too. I pulled out my phone again to call him, and just as I hit dial, I heard a faint ringtone in the distance. My head turned toward the fields. Way out in the grass, I could just barely see a dim glow, the screen of Carter's phone. My entire body tensed up. "Carter!" I shouted. No reply. I stepped into the grass, closer to the glow, calling his name again. This time, I heard a muffled voice. It was Carter, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. I hurried closer, and then his voice grew clearer. He was yelling for me to get down. I dropped into the grass instantly, still unable to see him, but trusting his panic. I glanced back toward the road, and sure enough, a car was slowly approaching. The same car from before. My heart sank. They cruised past like before, circling back multiple times, crawling along the road as if searching for someone. When they finally left, Carter emerged from his hiding spot. We both sprinted toward the gas station. Along the way, he explained what happened. The driver had actually pulled over and tried to coax him into the car. The man's demeanor was disturbing, blatantly threatening. When Carter refused, the guy stepped out, forcing Carter to take off running. The man must have assumed he'd keep to the road, so he returned to his car to chase him. But Carter dove into the grass to hide. In the process, his phone flew from his pocket, leaving him crouched in the dark, too scared to move. Eventually, we made it to the station safely and contacted the police. We gave them a full description of the man and his car, but they never located him. The whole thing shook me badly. To this day, I feel guilty knowing it was my mistake that put us in that terrifying position. One thing's certain, I'll never ignore the gas gauge again. This happened back in 2014. At that time, I almost never went on road trips since it was tough to take multiple days off just to drive, plus even more time to actually enjoy being away. But during that year, I was between jobs when my family started planning a surprise party for my dad's 50th birthday. Since gas prices were much cheaper than they are now, and flying was still more costly in comparison, I figured I'd make the drive. Besides, I wasn't working at the moment, so I had the time to spare. To avoid pushing myself too hard, I decided to stretch the trip across 3 days. After the first long day of driving, I pulled into a nearby motel for the night. It wasn't anything special, but I didn't care. I ended up sleeping in until 11 the next morning, then gathered my stuff to check out. When I opened the door, though, I was startled to find a man standing right outside, directly in the doorway. "Excuse me," I muttered, trying to slide past. He didn't move much, which made it awkward. He looked like he was in his mid-40s, heavy bags under his eyes, and an overall unfriendly expression. I brushed past him, carried my belongings to the car, but noticed he was still just standing there, watching me. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was good I was leaving anyway. Once I checked out, I got back on the road. That day was supposed to be my longest stretch, about 10 hours. For the first several hours, it was fine, passing through towns, stopping occasionally. But as the trip went on, the scenery became more rural, long empty highways with fewer towns between. Realizing gas stations were becoming sparse, I decided to stop at the next one to fill up. After paying, I set the pump and headed inside to grab a coffee. When I came back out, something immediately felt wrong. A deep red, old Corolla had pulled up so close behind my car that from the front it looked like its bumper was practically touching mine. Nobody was outside pumping gas, and the windows were tinted dark, so I couldn't see inside. But I had that unnerving sense that someone was watching me from behind the glass. I quickly finished fueling, got back into my car, and pulled away. Almost immediately after, the Corolla followed. They hadn't even stopped to get gas. As I merged onto the highway, I kept an eye on the mirror. The car stayed behind me for a while, though a few vehicles back, so I tried to brush it off as coincidence. Eventually, as the sun went down and fewer cars were on the road, I stopped noticing it. Another 4 hours passed without me spotting it again, and I pretty much forgot about the whole thing. By then, I was exhausted and fighting to stay awake. The closest big city was still a couple hours away, but I really wanted to push through, get a proper hotel there, and maybe check out the city in the morning. I thought about stopping for another coffee, even just to keep myself alert with something to sip on. At the next exit, I pulled off into a lonely gas station, but as I rolled in, I saw the store lights were out. It was closed. I sighed in frustration but decided I might as well top off the tank anyway. While filling up, I noticed a pair of headlights in the distance coming down the exit ramp. The place already felt eerie, dark, empty, surrounded by nothing but open road. My stomach dropped when I recognized the approaching car. The deep red Corolla. My heart rate spiked. It was like every instinct screamed I was being followed. I hurried to finish fueling, slamming the nozzle back into place. The Corolla came in fast, but instead of pulling up to a pump, it drove right up beside my driver's side door. I scrambled into my seat just in time as the passenger door of their car swung open. A man stepped out and rushed straight to my door, yanking on the handle. I locked eyes with him for only a second, but it was enough to realize it was the same man from the motel. Those cold, sleepless eyes gave me chills. I started the car immediately, and when he realized he couldn't get inside, he stopped tugging. I expected anger or frustration on his face. But instead, He grinned, a wide, unnerving smile, like the whole thing was some sick joke. That grin was worse than if he had screamed at me. It was the look of someone completely unhinged. I floored it back onto the highway, not slowing down until I reached the city limits. Thankfully, I didn't notice them following me again. But what really terrified me wasn't just the man, it was the fact that he came out from the passenger side. Which meant someone else had been driving. There were two of them. Whatever their plan was, they were both in on it. They had tailed me for over 10 hours, maybe even since the night before without me knowing. To this day, I still think about that trip. It's been over a decade, but the memory of that man's grin still sticks with me. A few years back, while I was still in college, I was driving home to spend winter break with my family. The trip was practically cross-country, which meant days of long, non-stop driving. I didn't have much money at the time, so hotels weren't an option. Instead, I brought blankets and pillows, planning to sleep in the car whenever I got too tired. On the second night of driving, around 1 a.m., after more than 11 hours straight behind the wheel, I finally hit my limit. I was starting to nod off, so I pulled into the next rest stop I came across. It was a small roadside pull-off with just a few spots, a bathroom building, and a couple vending machines. Only one other vehicle was there, parked all the way in the back. To give us both space, I parked in the opposite corner. I stretched my legs, used the restroom, and headed back out. The bathroom was gross, but I just wanted to get it over with. When I walked back to my car, though, my stomach tightened. There was a man standing right outside my window, peering inside. Can I help you?" I asked. My voice startled him. He jumped a little, laughed nervously, and stepped back, saying he just wanted to see if I was inside so he could ask if I had change for the vending machine. The excuse didn't sit right. My car windows weren't tinted. It was basically like looking into a fishbowl. He could have easily seen whether or not I was in there without pressing his face to the glass. I told him I didn't have cash and tried to brush past him to get inside. He stepped aside, and I figured that was the end of it. But he didn't leave. Instead, he tried to start another conversation, asking what brought me out here in the middle of the night. I cut him off, saying I needed to get some sleep. He gave a little wave, then walked back to the other car and got in. That calmed me slightly. At least he wasn't some random drifter hanging around, but something still felt off. To be honest, though, I was so exhausted I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. In hindsight, I probably should have left immediately and found another rest stop. But instead, I rearranged my stuff, leaned the seat back, and tried to settle in. My eyes were closed for maybe a few minutes when I noticed faint movement outside. I sat up and looked in the rearview mirror. My heart sank. The man had moved his car right up behind mine, this time much closer. That was enough for me. I knew I wouldn't be able to rest with him there. I decided to cut my losses and drive off, even if it meant staying awake longer. I threw the car in drive and got back on the highway, muttering under my breath about how creepy that guy was. The problem was, on that stretch of road, rest areas were spread far apart, so leaving cost me at least 30 or 40 extra minutes. It was dangerously hard to keep my eyes open now. My lids would drop for seconds at a time before I jolted awake. Eventually, though, I spotted another rest stop. Relief hit me, but when I pulled in, I realized it was abandoned. The building was boarded up, graffiti all over, no lights besides the dim street lamps. Still, I was too drained to keep going, so I parked. Oddly enough, I actually fell asleep fast. I think I got a solid 2 hours before being jolted awake by a loud crash against my car. The whole vehicle shook. Disoriented, I whipped around to see headlights parked directly behind me. Then, in the right mirror, I caught sight of a figure standing next to my car, holding a metal baseball bat. Before I could react, he swung again, smashing my rear window. My heart pounded as I fumbled for my keys, yelling, "What the hell?" The man stepped closer to the passenger side. That's when I saw his face, and instantly recognized him. It was the same guy from the previous rest stop. He wore a twisted grin, eyes wide, as he swung the bat against my door repeatedly, shouting "liar" over and over. I had no idea what he meant, or why he was saying it. I managed to start the engine, trembling, and peeled out of there before he could do more. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911, but I did, telling the dispatcher what happened as I drove. I met with an officer at a nearby gas station, where they inspected the damage. 2 windows shattered, dents all over the side, and I hadn't even realized my back tire had been slashed and was nearly flat. Another officer went to the abandoned rest stop, confirmed the damage, but of course the man was gone. They put out a notice with his description and the car, but nothing came of it. I ended up stuck in a nearby town for a few days while my car was repaired. Luckily, I eventually made it home safely. But what haunts me most is how irrational the whole thing was. That man seemed to lose his mind over something as simple as me not giving him cash, or maybe just not talking to him. The idea that I could have been killed that night over something so meaningless still sends chills through me.